My name is Emily, and at 44 years old, I am a TV broadcaster. My husband, Tom, also 44, runs a photography studio. We began dating in high school and tied the knot at the age of 26, having been each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend. Our relationship felt like a natural progression, and we never considered anyone else. When I was 25 and tragically lost my parents in an accident, I couldn't fathom how I would have coped without Tom, who became like family to me. Following our marriage, Tom moved into the house my parents left me, and I felt a sense of security and warmth, surrounded by the memories of my parents and Tom. 2 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a son, and our happiness multiplied. Tom proved to be an ideal husband, sharing responsibilities for household chores and childcare seamlessly, making our lives as a working couple more manageable. However, my mother-in-law, Jen, did not share the same appreciation for Tom's involvement in domestic tasks. A decade ago, an incident unfolded when our son started elementary school. Jane, who lived about 30 minutes away, began visiting more frequently to assist with picking up our son after school. This was necessary as after-school care ended earlier than our work hours, and Jane's help became invaluable. Around the same time, my father-in-law, Steve, had retired and was at home, though he couldn't contribute to household chores. Jane, being a traditional housewife, disapproved of Tom taking charge in the kitchen. She would mutter comments like, "A man shouldn't be in the kitchen," or express disbelief, saying, "Our generation would never imagine such a thing." During my initial visit to Tom's parents' house, Jane suggested I should quit my job, emphasizing her belief that women should be housewives. She seemed uncomfortable with my glamorous job as a broadcaster, while Tom, who knew me from our high school broadcasting club days, consistently supported my dream. Similarly, I backed Tom in his pursuit of becoming a photographer, and working together felt entirely natural for us. Despite successfully navigating the challenges of nursery school days, elementary school brought new difficulties with less flexible and appealing after-school care. This situation led to increased reliance on Jane's help. However, her visits came with comments on the cleanliness and orderliness of our home, to which Tom would casually respond, defending his involvement in household tasks. Despite her assistance being appreciated, Jane continued to express her disapproval behind my back, questioning Tom's choices and suggesting it was detrimental to our reputation. I listened quietly without interjecting, while Jen held onto her old-fashioned beliefs, despite owning a smartphone, a rarity among people her age. Among my circle of friends, I was the sole owner of such a device, and Jen often boasted about its capabilities, emphasizing how easy it made things. She browsed the internet for various purposes, exclaiming, "Look at what you can do so effortlessly now." Embrace convenience. Her smartphone wasn't the only modern convenience she embraced. While our family relied on a traditional paper-based shopping order, Jen advocated for online services, suggesting it was a waste to pay for delivery and insisting we should do the shopping ourselves. However, when she discovered that the service could be ordered online, she promptly encouraged me to switch, criticizing the old-fashioned method of ordering on paper. Jen would often stay until late at night while Tom and I prepared dinner. She'd mention needing to return home for Steve's dinner, implying he wouldn't eat alone. Steve, unable to perform any household tasks, prompted me to ask Tom about his cooperative nature with chores one day. Tom explained that his mother's complaints about his father's lack of help served as a negative example for him. He resolved to be proactive in sharing household responsibilities to avoid similar complaints in his own marriage. Jen's contradictory attitudes toward household chores puzzled me. She seemed amused that her son, raised in an environment where chores were shared, actively participated, while she resented her husband's lack of involvement. I couldn't comprehend her satisfaction criteria, but I suspected she found solace in complaining. To maintain peace, I chose to keep my distance as much as possible during those times. I never imagined Jen would feel so trapped that she'd resort to something as extreme as selling our house without consent. That summer, my company offered me a rare opportunity to participate in a sports broadcast at the World Championship overseas, which felt like a well-deserved reward for my hard work. It was an opportunity I couldn't let slip by, so I immediately discussed it with Tom. He, occupied with various commitments, expressed willingness to help but was unsure about managing our son John alone while juggling his responsibilities. Listening in, Jen offered to take care of things at home during my absence, despite my reservations based on past experiences. And with no one else to rely on, I reluctantly entrusted my son to her care. Although we contemplated having Tom and John stay at Tom's parents' place, the logistics of commuting to school made it impractical. Hence, Jen decided to stay at our house during weekdays to look after John. After successfully completing my broadcasting work abroad and feeling both exhausted and relieved to return to the U.S., I arrived home on a weekday afternoon, lugging a heavy suitcase. To my surprise, Jane greeted me eagerly at the entrance, as if she had been anticipating my arrival. Just as I was about to express my gratitude for taking care of the house, she dropped a bombshell. The house had been sold for $300,000, and she intended to claim the full amount. My fatigued mind struggled to comprehend her words at first. This was our house, our home. I questioned her in disbelief, only to receive a confident affirmation from her gleaming eyes. Stunned and confused, I reiterated that we owned the house, but Jane burst into laughter, accusing me of lying and insisting that there was a registration certificate in my name. Faced with her unwavering stance and feeling utterly perplexed, I realized the conversation was going nowhere. I decided to shift the conversation to ease my heart, but the tension lingered. "Why are you selling what belongs to both of us?" I inquired, trying to reason calmly. "If it's mine, it's Tom's too, and consequently ours." As her bloodshot eyes met mine, a sense of unease crept over me. "To build a new house," she declared, her tone resolute. "A house for you and Tom, where he won't need to lift a finger for household chores. I've always felt sorry for him." Her words sent a chill down my spine. A new house, exclusively for Tom and me? The notion left me bewildered. "But why?" I asked, trying to grasp her reasoning. "Because," she explained, "I taught Tom not to engage in such tasks, and I won't allow him to do them in the future." Her conviction was unwavering, driven by a distorted understanding of our marital dynamics. Piecing together the puzzle, I realized that Jen's perspective stemmed from a misunderstanding. Tom's simple declaration of the house belonging to me had been misconstrued. She believed Tom's involvement in household chores was a deviation from his desires, fueled by his residence in my home. Moreover, I learned that Steve's retirement had brought financial strain, exacerbating their insecurities about their rented apartment. In desperation, they opted for the unthinkable, selling our home. But this isn't just mine, and Tom finds it normal to share household responsibilities. I protested, hoping to reason with her. Jen dismissed my words as falsehoods, accusing me of distorting reality to suit my narrative. Though I wanted to point out her role in the situation, I needed clarity first. "Where did you sell it?" I pressed, attempting to understand the extent of her actions. "To AA Real Estate," she disclosed, citing an easy online process and a convincing offer. They assured me it was the right decision, given the high demand in the area. Her words stung as I realized the magnitude of her actions. Selling a 20-year-old house for $300,000 seemed like a windfall, but the consequences were far-reaching. Gratitude was the last thing on my mind amidst the turmoil her decision had caused. "Didn't I find a good real estate company?" I excitedly shared with Jane, having researched and located a seemingly suitable one online. However, my attempts to contact them proved futile as there was no answer. Questioning Jane about her visit to the real estate company's address, she responded nonchalantly, "No, I didn't go. You don't need to do that nowadays." Determined to verify the legitimacy of the real estate company, I insisted, "Go to this address tomorrow, or we won't discuss this any further." Reluctantly, Jane left, and the next day she called me in tears, It's not there? The real estate company doesn't exist at the address. There's only a dilapidated wooden house, seemingly uninhabited. I was astonished by her foolishness and couldn't help but burst into laughter upon her return. She explained that during my absence, she discovered a house registration certificate in my name, assuming she could sell the property. She had contracted a real estate agent who shamelessly assured her that it was fine to proceed, even if she wasn't the owner, as long as she possessed the certificate. Believing them, she sent all the requested documents, and when a buyer was found, they requested a deposit, half of the $9,600 commission on the $300,000 sale. She transferred $4,800. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I called the police, and 2 officers arrived at our house. It turned out that such internet fraud, posing as real estate agents, had become increasingly common. These fraudsters offered free valuations, requested official documents, introduced a supposed buyer, took a fee, and then disappeared. With many vacant houses and the ability to fake addresses for document delivery, such scams had become prevalent. The police questioned Jane, who was trembling as she answered. The officer clarified, "Let me ask again. The house deed you sent belongs to your daughter-in-law, right?" Jane nervously confirmed, realizing the gravity of the situation now that a third party was involved. Jane nervously began, "I thought, well, it belonged to my son," but her explanation was swiftly countered by the officer. "Even if it was your son's, isn't it strange to try to sell someone else's house?" He questioned incredulously. Red-faced, Jane blurted out, "No, it's not like that. Emily asked me to. She wanted to get the house appraised to sell it," spouting a nonsensical excuse. Turning to me for clarification, the officer asked, "Is that true?" I simply replied, "No, I didn't ask for that." The officer, unsure of whose testimony to believe, eventually seemed to trust me over my visibly distressed Jane. "She says she didn't ask for it. You shouldn't sell things on your own, madame. Normally, this wouldn't even be possible. This is just outrageous," he lectured, and Jane bit her lip, looking down in silence. Convinced of Jane's rash actions, the officer inquired about the deed registration she had sent. When she replied in a faint voice, "No, it was the original," the officer was even more astounded. Looking at me, he asked, "Will you file a theft report?" I answered, "No, that document is invalid now. Actually, this house has already been sold to someone else. When we saw it, we could do so just with the registration identification information. The law had changed, so the deed registration wasn't needed. Indeed, I had received the deed when I inherited the house from my parents, but it was unnecessary when selling the house." Jane, unaware of this, thought that deed meant I still owned the house. Normally, real estate agents would request or retrieve a copy of the deed themselves for verification, but fraudsters didn't need such details. After the embarrassment, she looked at me resentfully and muttered, "Why didn't you sell the house? It's a curse to sell your parents' home. People in flashy jobs are like this." I met her gaze and said, "Tom wanted it. He needed a lump sum." Jane exclaimed in surprise, her face turning even bluer. At that time, Tom wanted to start his dream photography business, but didn't have enough funds. The house was our only significant asset, so we sold it to an acquaintance and rented it back. When I explained everything, Jane's shoulders slumped as she muttered, "So Tom's success now is because you sold the house, Emily." Well, I could say that, but I believe that spouses should stick together through thick and thin. "We're in this together," I responded. Upon hearing this, Jane suddenly began to cry bitterly. "I wanted to work too," she sobbed, her voice choked with frustration. "My husband can't do anything, even now after his retirement. He does nothing. What has my life been for?" Her litany of complaints against T continued, leaving the police officer struggling to complete the report. Ultimately, the fraud report was filed. But even after 10 years, the culprits have not been caught, and it's unlikely that the money will ever be recovered. Following the incident, Steve became vigilant over Jan's actions and took over all financial control, denying her any access to money. Whenever she needed something, she had to request it from him and would be given cash. "It's so suffocating," Jane complained to Tom, who reminded her that she brought it upon herself. Now with no disposable income, she works through senior job listings and currently teaches the elderly how to use smartphones. She's well regarded for her ability to empathize with the struggles of older learners. Steve, perhaps due to his pride, found senior jobs unsuitable and quit soon after starting, providing no income. Nowadays, Jen is busier, often leaving Steve with household duties as she goes out. Interestingly, he's taken an interest in cooking and is getting quite good at it. The roles in Tom's parents' house have reversed, but both seem to have found new fulfillment. As for me, after my overseas business trip, I successfully climbed the career ladder and now anchor the evening news. Tom's photography studio is thriving, and we've managed to save enough to consider buying back and renovating the family home. We are grateful to our acquaintance for allowing us to keep the house despite the outrageous incident. It worked out well for Tom's parents in the end. Our son is turning 17 and approaching adulthood, so I shared the story with him as a cautionary tale about internet fraud. However, to preserve his grandparents' dignity, I've kept the part about them trying to sell our house a secret.